One of the biggest problems with Tesla's full self-driving right now is that the navigation information that's provided by Google doesn't really mesh particularly well with Tesla's full self-driving, which leads to errors like incorrect speed limit assignments, incorrect knowledge about lanes, incorrect knowledge about stop signs, etc. But what if Tesla not only has a possible solution, but one that they may have been working on for over a year? Let's take a look. Hey y'all, it's Dr. Know-It-All. This video actually comes from a conversation with Dan Cobb, so thank you so much, Dan. He wrote me a little while ago and said, here's an idea for a video. Can full self-driving be solved with all of the issues with Google Maps? And if you don't know, Tesla, of course, uses Google Maps as the basic information that they get. If you look at the bottom corner of the screen on Tesla Maps display, it says map data provided by Google. So, obviously, the map data is provided by Google, and then Tesla does things with it. But anyway, Dan notes that there are things like incorrect speed limits. There are mismarked stop signs, two-way and four-way. It has to know which is which. There are lane issues, and there are lagging updates for updated roads. And I found this out myself. It took about 6 months for Google Maps to catch up to a road that had been moved about 500 meters to the east in my city, in Athens. So the road used to kind of have an intersection here, and then it got moved not even 500 meters, maybe 300 meters. It was because for some reason it was too close to a highway. It was illegal, and they spent millions of dollars fixing it and moving it. But anyway, after they moved it, it took forever for Google Maps to catch up and to realize that that was there, and that was leading to incorrect navigation on full self-driving's part. And if you haven't seen some of the videos I did, you can definitely check out one or two of them up here where I go to that intersection, and you can see that the car doesn't know which way to go because the navigation information is completely confused by the fact that that's been moved. So my response was, well, it might have to learn like humans to ignore full self-driving. But then Dan wrote back and said, or should Tesla take on the challenge of making their own map? Which made me think back to CVPR 2023, and I'm still waiting for CVPR 2024 talks to come out. If anybody knows where any of them are from Tesla, definitely let me know in the comments, because last year I was doing videos on this. I did 2 of them, and I'm going to reference both of those today. One from Ashok, the head of Tesla's AI, and this is previous to the ride around with Elon Musk on August 25th or whatever it was of last year by a couple of months. So it gave us a hint as to what full self-driving 12 was going to look like. And then the other one was from Phil Dwan, and of course I will put links to both of those in the description so you can watch the full videos. They are very, very much worthwhile watching, especially thinking back about how full self-driving 12 makes use of the information that they gave us last year. So I'm kind of hoping for these new CVPR talks to come out so that they might give us a clue about what full self-driving 13 or something like that might be looking like. But anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull out a couple of short sections from those talks from last year and then discuss them. The first one is from Ashok.
And then we get to this really cool fleet auto labeling hybrid nerf system thing here. So I'm going to play some of the video, but you can see in this still frame capture that what we have is many cars driving this same intersection, the same area over and over and over again, day, night, sunny, rainy, whatever that kind of conditions are. And what that does is it allows the Tesla team to align all of those different trips and utilize that to create a very, very tightly defined radiance field. In other words, a 3D reconstruction of what's going on here. And by doing that, they can actually create a ground truth of that scene without ever having to go there and take pictures of it or 3D LiDAR scans. And they can utilize that to do auto labeling and all sorts of other cool things. So very, very cool.
Multiple Tesla vehicles driving through the location, upload their video clips and other vehicle kinematic data to us. We bring everything together and reconstruct the entire 3D scene. So the polylines that you look, there is a cyan-colored one. There's also a few other colored ones. Those are all different cars doing different trips through the world, and it's actually all very well aligned. Let me see if I can play it again. Yeah. The pink line and the cyan line that you see there, those are like different trips of different cars driving around, and everything is just aligned very nicely. And this multi-trip reconstruction has enabled us to, get all the lanes, road lines, everything directly from the fleet in the millions, anywhere on Earth, essentially. Once you have this base structure of trajectories, calibration from all these cameras, you can really do a lot of cool things to reconstruct the entire scene.
I'm in LA this month visiting my brother and his family, and that means wonderful days enjoying the weather and the beach, and lovely evenings out with my family enjoying a good time together. That's why I love ZBiotics. ZBiotics allows me to enjoy nights out in moderation while feeling awesome the next morning. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic is the world's first genetically engineered probiotic. It was invented by PhD scientists to tackle rough mornings after drinking. Here's how it works. When you drink, alcohol gets converted into a toxic byproduct in the gut. It's this byproduct and not dehydration that's to blame for your rough next day. ZBiotics Pre-Alcohol Probiotic produces an enzyme to break this byproduct down. It's designed to work like your liver, but in your gut where you need it most. Just remember to drink ZBiotics before drinking alcohol, drink responsibly, and get a good night's sleep to feel your best tomorrow. Go to zbiotics.com/drno or scan the QR code on the screen right now to get 15% off your first order when you use Dr. No at checkout. You can also sign up for a subscription using my code so you can stay prepared no matter the time or the occasion. ZBiotics is backed with a 100% money-back guarantee, so if you're unsatisfied for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Before my family did wine tasting near Santa Barbara last weekend, I drank a bottle of ZBiotics before heading out, I stayed hydrated between drinks, and the next day I felt great. ZBiotics is a real game changer for fun nights and the next day. So be sure to head to zbiotics.com/drno and use the code DrNo at checkout for 15% off. A big thanks to ZBiotics for sponsoring this episode, and now let's get back to it. So that's the particularly pertinent information from Ashok from CVPR 2023, and then Phil actually goes and talks about the same thing at a talk at the same conference.
And then, of course, we have this really interesting slide, which again tails into what Ashok talked about, so I'm going to go over this relatively quickly. But they can use multi-trips and nerfs to create a 3D reconstruction of any scene. So basically, any intersection that they go through, any road that they drive down, as long as multiple Teslas or the same Tesla at different times of day and multiple times has driven through this area, they get many, many instances of that. And they can combine those together to create a very, very high resolution truth, ground truth map of what's going on in that area. Not just roads, but also, sidewalks, curbs, buildings, trees, stop signs, whatever else you need to have, they can grab that by getting this multi-trip reconstruction done. And just to reiterate how important this one model to rule them all is, Phil talks about that again here.
And this year, we extended this same approach. Besides names, we start to model everything. So this is a 3D reconstruction from multiple trips of Teslas in the same area, and we put together. All this is generated from 8 cameras of video streams, and we put together through different trips. And you can see that it's able to capture all this very high quality information, and we can use that to train all kinds of stuff to make sure the world is consistent. And all this data is very rich in terms of that. We don't have a separate data set just to provide one ground truth anymore. We just have a unified data set that captures everything we need to train such a foundation model.
Okay, so what are Ashok and Phil talking about here? They're talking about using Tesla's fleet, in other words, all of the vehicles, to create a 3D reconstruction of scenes. Things like complex intersections. You could hear Ashok and Phil both talking about things like stop signs, about lanes, about curbs, about all these things. What they showed us was like a 3D reconstruction, which was kind of eye candy, where you could see cars and trees and buildings and curbs and stuff. But imagine an actually simpler task, which is just going through these scenes and semantically segmenting them out. In other words, having a neural network that's trained to go like, that looks like a stop sign, that looks like an intersection, that looks like a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit sign, etc., right? So the same thing that Google Maps does, but they do it very, very laboriously. They send out a person with a bunch of cameras all around a car. If you've ever seen one of the Google Maps cars, it's crazy looking. It's studied with, it looks like they're robo-taxis basically, but it's got cameras everywhere, and it drives down the road slowly, and it picks up all of this information. And then, of course, I'm sure they use AI and techniques to be able to pull that into maps. It's very expensive to maintain all of this stuff, which is one of the reasons why very few companies, aside from big time players like Apple and Google, etc., and actually there's other companies that they actually buy a lot of their information from. Anyway, it gets kind of deep, but there are not many players in the map space. But the problem with this kind of mapping is the same thing as these robo-taxis that are geofenced. If you only have a few cars and you have to pay engineers to drive around, it's very, very expensive to update your maps. And so there's a situation where it's like, well, is it worth going back to Athens, Georgia, just to see if there are new roads and things like that? Not much has changed in the last 6 months, so maybe nothing's changed recently. And so then you get out of date in terms of intersections by 6 months because a Google Maps engineer doesn't drive around for 6 months or 2 years or something like that, and so things don't get updated. But just like with Waymo versus Tesla's full self-driving solutions, Tesla has a major advantage here, which is that they have a fleet of millions of cars driving around the world every single day. And they already have the technology. They had it a year ago that they discussed with us. They have a technology where they can reconstruct these scenes, not using one car, but using many, many cars. So they can cross-reference all of these vehicles driving down roads, and they can take that sort of multiple input. And again, Tesla a year ago had the technology in hand to do this. And while they showed us a 3D reconstruction of the scene, which is great for, full self-driving, for making sure you don't crash into things and understanding scenes, it could also very, very easily be used to create maps, because the data is all there. They have the technology to take that data and semantically segment it out into the important information that you want to know about a particular scene. And then they could replace Google Maps with their own maps as a basis for that. And those maps would be significantly better and would be updated constantly, because the fleet is constantly driving these roads. I drive around Athens all the time, so they could take mine and hundreds of other cars that drive around Athens, other Teslas. They could take all of that data and they could be updating these maps almost in real time, right? I'm not saying this would actually be done in real time, because unlike full self-driving that has to happen at 36 frames per second plus in order to keep the car from crashing into things, that's a critical element of full self-driving. For mapping, if it takes a couple of days for it to go back to the main data center and chunk over all of this information, or even a week or something like that, again, things don't change all that fast on roads, but stuff like construction and things like that could be flagged and could be moved to the top of the queue, so that maybe if there's a bridge that's being repaired or something like that on a particular highway, or some construction that's being done in a town and it picks it up from a number of vehicles, it can move that to the top of the queue, because that can flag it, and then it can remap that area very, very rapidly and produce those maps that then get uploaded to people's vehicles, and those vehicles are then aware of those kinds of construction issues or other things going on. So with this information in hand, the really big question is, why has Tesla not done this yet? The number one reason could be that they are being bought out by Google. Google might be paying them money. As opposed to Tesla paying Google money, Google might be paying Tesla money to use their maps because it looks good for them. They can say like, hey, this is a mapping system that we're using. Or it's possible that Tesla entered into a 7 or 8 year contract with Google Maps where they have to use Google's maps. That is also a possibility. The third option, which doesn't seem as likely, is that Tesla just might not want to do this because it's a burden. There's a potential liability issue with having incorrect map data and all of that kind of stuff. And maybe they don't want to do that. But given how aggressive Tesla always is, and the fact that they even have their own insurance and stuff like that now, I find that less probable than the fact that there's some sort of contractual obligation for Tesla to utilize Google's maps. So it's possible we might not see a wholesale replacement of Google Maps for a period of time due to an issue like that. But in the meantime, what Tesla could do, if they can't wholesale replace these maps, is they could create some sort of annotation on top of Google Maps. So they load in the map data and then load in some sort of annotation of all the things that are wrong with Google's maps. So Google might not be super appreciative of that, but they could do it very, very transparently so that you don't even notice that as a user, and it still looks like Google's map data. But Tesla could load in something like that, like, this is an incorrectly labeled stop sign, or an incorrect lane assignment, or an incorrect four-way stop, or things like that. It could go in and it could fix the problems that it sees and produce that for us users when we see our map data. And one of the advantages of that is that could actually be done kind of in real time. And so while that's more cumbersome and not as elegant a solution as just replacing things overall, it would be a solution that Tesla could do. But you never know. With the introduction of the Cybercab on August 8th, which is just a month away now, we might in fact see a simultaneous release of Tesla maps. We might see something like that pop out. Tesla might have been working on this very thing, and we could see that happen. And a really interesting aspect of this is, and I don't know that Tesla would do this right away, but Tesla could actually make a small side business. Again, they could make money off of this. So not only could they release it for all Teslas, for all of us drivers getting it on our cars for free, but they could also sell that data back to Google or Apple or TomTom or whoever. They could actually sell this map information to companies, and it would probably be a lot cheaper than paying for these very expensive engineers to drive around all the time and collect this data in a very laborious, city by city manner. Rather than that, they could get all of this data at once. And so in a weird twist of fate, what we could see is Tesla becoming the major map generator for at least the United States and Europe, possibly China as well. It just would be very bizarre, but that is definitely within the realm of possibility because it's something that Tesla has access to. As we saw a year ago, they were working on technology that would make this relatively easy to perform. It's just a question of whether they want to do it or not, and whether their contractual obligations with Google might be stopping them from doing so. All right, so that's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments, because I would be very interested to find out what you have to say about that. And definitely, if you know anything about the CVPR 2024 talks, definitely let me know that as well. While you're down there, if you don't mind liking and subscribing, it really helps the channel out. Thank you so much. And finally, a big thanks once again to ZBiotics for sponsoring today's video. Be sure to check out my link in the description and use Dr. No at checkout to save 15% off your order. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.